Guys, you guys were all middle schoolers when I first came to East Cross, and I've got to literally see you grow up in front of me. And it's just been an honor to grow up with you and see you guys as you've come along your journey through school. And today is a great day. It's graduation Sunday, and I want to do something fun. I want to throw a little Evan into the service today, if you will. Because, you know, there are youth in this building. They're going to praise God, and we're going to have a little bit of fun because that's just how I am. So we're going to play a quick game, if you will. And most of you don't know that this year's graduating class is the first class that has students that were not born in the 1900s. Just let that sink in for a second, because this is the very first year that there are students that were born in the year. How many of y'all were born in the year 2000? All right, and the rest of you, 99? Okay, so this is the first year that has students in 2000. So most of you guys were not born or had no idea what was going on in the year 2000. So we're going to do a quick quiz. I want you all to keep track of how many you get right, okay? And then I want the congregation to see how many you get right as well, and we'll kind of see how well these students do. So first question is, which of these took place in 2000? 1, the Summer Olympics were held in Sydney, Australia. 2, the first Harry Potter book was published. 3, Apple released the iPod. 4, President Bill Clinton is impeached for perjury. All right, everybody kind of get your answers. And if you feel super confident, congregation, you can let us know what the answer is. The answer is the Summer Olympics were held in Sydney, Australia. How many of y'all got that right? I'm not going to ask you till the end, okay? So, yeah, the next Olympics is in 2000, in case you were wondering. Let's move over to movies, all right? What Disney movie was released in 2000? 1, Toy Story 2, The Emperor's New Groove, Apple Monsters Incorporated, come on, or The Jungle Book 2, all right? Make sure you grab your answer. Most of you should probably know this. The answer is
Emperor's New Groove.
Emperor's New Groove. A great underrated movie. Loved it growing up. How about this one? Let's go to music. What was the album of the year released in 2000? Was it Two Against Nature by Steely Dan, Bye 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 by NSYNC? I'm sure most of you probably know that one. Music by Madonna, or Beautiful Day by the great band U2? All right. I think you got your answers right. Anybody know the answer? Two Against Nature by Steely Dan. I was not expecting that one when I took this the first time. All right, for all you Phillips and ConocoPhillips employees, what was the average cost of gas in 2000? I was impressed because Chad actually knew this because he filled up his brand new truck and he still remembers the gas price. Answer is $1.51. That sounds so good right now when I fill up my car. All right, let's go to some current events. I'm feeling like some of you should know this one. Who was born in 2000? Ellie Fanning, Haley Steinfeld, Kylie Jenner, or Willow Smith? All right, this is a tough one for me. I could not name this one. The answer was Willow Smith. That is Will Smith's daughter, the singer and actress Willow Smith. And let's go with the last one, sports. Everybody knows how well the Patriots have been doing the last 10 years. But let's see who did well in 2000. The Lions, the Patriots, the Giants, or Rams won the Super Bowl in 2000. The answer? The St. Louis Rams, who are not in St. Louis anymore, so that's just sad. The year was 2000. Thank you for playing. Seniors, raise your hand if you got 3 or more right. Wow. Nicely done, Kirsten. That's really? Wow, okay. All right, so here we are on graduation Sunday. Now let's, the fun's over. Let's get to the message. No, I'm kidding. Most of y'all just totally missed that one. So as Chad and I, we're going to kind of tag team today. So we're going to give you a little bit of a different feel. Are you okay with that, Chad? All right, he literally hasn't said anything yet today. This is new. I kind of just want to sit in this for a second. Okay, so as we got ready to prepare for this message, we're trying to get together and talk about it. Well, one after another, something came up. We tried to get together and something came up. We wanted to meet and all of a sudden we had some assembly that we had to go to, or we had to prepare for the upcoming VBS, or we had a youth event, or whatever. Every time it seemed like we wanted to meet, something came up. And then all of a sudden we realized, why don't we speak about busyness? Right? This is the perfect month to talk about business. Anyone who's had students knows how crazy this month is, especially when you have a senior. So we wanted to talk about busyness, and I realized that when I've gotten into busyness, I quickly get overwhelmed very fast. I mean, every time that I get very busy, I get overwhelmed, I get stressed, I start forgetting things, and every year I get into busyness. I get into this stress, right? I get too busy, and I just keep doing this to myself over and over. So I wanted to do some reflection and look on the outside looking in. Why do I keep doing this over and over? Why do I keep doing this to myself? And so I did some research, and I found some pretty interesting things. I found myself on an immigration website that teaches foreigners what it's like to be around Americans, like basically the society and the culture that we as Americans live in. And I found it very interesting. And I want to read this to you, and I want to see if this connects with you at all, because I thought it connected with me very well. Here's what it says. It is generally easy to adjust to American society and its people. However, don't try to be too friendly or personal with them too soon. Americans value their privacy a lot. Don't just show up at someone's house without first calling and making an appointment. Even if someone says, you can come over at any time, we'd love to have you, right? Because we all do that. Don't take it literally. You still have to follow etiquette. If a person wants you to visit their home, they will call you first and specify the date and time that they would like you to visit. I just thought that was so interesting because we say it all the time. Come on over. You're more than welcome to come over. But if the doorbell rings and no one's called, everybody's hiding under the couches like, who's here, All right, here's what I really want you to hear. Life in the U.S. is generally fast-paced and underline busy. It is all about making money. People don't want to waste time on anything, even eating food. That is why the U.S. invented fast food and is the largest consumer of fast food. And so I realized after doing more and more research that we are busy all the time and we're fast-paced all the time. And as I thought about it, I realized that basically busyness is like, it's our modern status symbol, if you will, right? It's the currency of social capital, if you will, okay? Let me give you an example. If I'm busy, it means that I'm important, right? I'm doing a lot at work. And we've all grown up with the saying that time is money, right? And so if I'm working a lot and I'm doing a lot of things, I'm making money, I'm active in my community, I'm helping my friends out, I'm an important person, right? And so I think subconsciously that I'm making myself busy because I need to be important, right? But what I hate about this is I let it overwhelm me, right? And I finally get to the point where I'm so busy that I'm stressed and overwhelmed, and life just isn't that fun anymore. And so Chad and I talked about this, and we kind of talked about our first busy time of our adult lives, if you will. And so we started talking about our first week of college.
Yeah, as Evan said, today we are going to be talking about just the big...
Oh, can we just look at this picture for a second? This is Chad in college, everyone. Look at that sweet mustache.
That is the mustache of which my mother spoke last week, yes. So, but anyways, today we are talking about the busyness of life and how we need to still be able to find God and God's will for our lives. As Evan said, as we were talking about this, my mind went back to my first week of college. You see, I gone to Stillwater, OSU Go Cowboys. I got to Stillwater about 3 weeks early to get settled into my house, to find a job, and to map out the fastest ways so that I could get onto campus, right? So I knew that once that first week happened, I would be ready. I will tell you that within just a few days, I had everything in my house perfect, just exactly where I wanted it. I found a job at the Colvin Center, which is the recreation facility on campus. And I knew exactly how long it would take for me to get from my house to the Colvin Center for work, to Ag Hall for classes, and to the student union, both driving and walking. And I will tell you, I was ready. I was absolutely ready. When it came to that first week, though, I felt kind of like I wasn't, right? Now, I will tell you, I do not remember the first week of most of my classes, but I do remember the first week of forestry. That's right, you heard me say that, forestry. I started out in a forestry major, at least I started out on paper, because it was the shortest line for enrollment in the College of Ag. It really was. So that's why I did it. Yeah. I know. I was actually an animal science pre-vet major with hopes of being a veterinarian one day. But I took the path of least resistance and wound up in forestry for a semester. But I'll tell you, that forestry class was designed to be an intro class. But I'll tell you, somebody forgot to tell the professor. So that by the end of the very first week, we had to be able to know the common name and the genus and species name for 20 of the most common trees in Oklahoma, just by looking at the leaves. Yeah, that was my first week. The professor said this test would see if we were really cut out for forestry. Get the pun? Forestry cut? Okay. And I will tell you, I was a little worried about what was going to happen. But I figured, you know what? It's Monday. I have the whole week. To get it done. But it's amazing how Monday turns into Tuesday and Tuesday turns into Friday, right? And I'll tell you, it was nothing like high school. Nothing like high school. I was overwhelmed. Like as Evan said, I was kind of overwhelmed too at the busyness that just seemed to steam ahead each day of that week. And not only was it the homework that I had to stay on top of, but now I had to do some kind of the simple things, right? I had to take care of the simple things like feeding myself. That was new. Waking myself up in time to go to class and work, going to class, going to Joe's for cheese fries, which I would tell you, going to Joe's for cheese fries really helped me learn money management skills, okay? There were so many lessons crammed into that first week that I was not expecting. Well, I got to class on that first Friday, and I will tell you, I didn't do well on the test. I thought I was prepared. I mean, after all, I had studied for hours and hours in front of the TV, and I only took breaks to work, to sleep, and, of course, to eat cheese fries. I ate a lot of cheese fries from Joe's, all right? But as it turned out, what I really learned that first week were some bad personal and studying habits. That's what I learned was some bad habits. Well, the following Monday, I got that dreaded note on the test that I was to make an appointment with the professor to discuss the test. Well, I did, and let's just say that it didn't go well, especially when I told him that I was only in forestry because it was the shortest line for enrollment. Yes, I was that brazen to tell him, and I shouldn't have been. But he strongly encouraged me to work a little harder and to take it seriously, even if it only counted as an elective towards my major. Well, I did, and I'll tell you, I actually wound up with a B in the class, so it kind of worked out.
You took forestry.
Forestry, yeah. It was fun.
All right.
It was fun.
That's awesome. Let me tell you about my first week of college. It wasn't as stressful, it seemed like, as yours, but I do remember my first week, and I had a little bit of fun. I played baseball. I started practice in August. We had to show up a little early and start practicing. So this was my first baseball picture in college that I ever had. And then I have another picture of my first picture ever in college. And yeah, I look like a middle schooler. But I remember my first week. My parents moved me into my suite. I got to decide where everything went. To me, it was a big room, a little dorm room. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever because it was mine. I decided where everything went. I put my bed up on PVC pipes so I could get the cheapest little futon I could find underneath it. I mean, it was really just a cool place for me to hang out. And I even had a roommate that spoke no English, and which was actually okay because he was never in the room, so it was kind of my own place. And I still remember the first night in college, I went to Taco Bell at 10:30 by myself just because I could. Like mom, usually it was like, no, you can't go out this late, it's school night. But on a Monday morning or a Monday night, I went out and got Taco Bell, which doesn't seem like a big deal to anyone who has a Taco Bell in their town, but I grew up with a Subway, and that was it. So having a Taco Bell in town was the coolest thing to me. I also remember going to practice or weights and conditioning at 5 a.m. and going and doing that, and directly after that, going to an 8 a.m. class, and then going to every single one of my classes, and right after my last class, I literally ran to the practice field so I wouldn't get in trouble for being late to practice. That was my everyday schedule. And I remember sitting there one evening, I sat down on my futon, and I thought, I will never be this busy in my life ever again. And little did I know, post-college life got even crazier. But I guess as we talked about this, the one thing that we found, I feel like I'm forgetting about you guys back here. Hi. But the one thing that we found was that the same thing happened to us as we neglected the same exact thing, and that was our relationship with God.
Yeah, you're right, Evan. My relationship with God did get lost in the busyness of that first week and the subsequent weeks to come. And I'll tell you, it wasn't intentional. It just seemed to fall into this pile of neglect. I think that can happen to each and every one of us. I mean, looking back on your life, I think that you would agree with me that there are things that we intentionally neglect, and there's things that we unintentionally neglect. You know, for me, going back to that first week of college, I will tell you that I intentionally neglected my studies so that I could do some of the fun activities that they have for freshmen, right? They have all these mixers, things for you to get to meet people and get accustomed to the campus. I intentionally neglected class because I was too tired from working late the night before. And I'll tell you, as Evan said, those 8 o'clock classes, they are absolutely brutal. I intentionally neglected cleaning up the house so that I could spend time with my girlfriend. You see, I made those small decisions that first week. And then in the scramble to get it all done last minute, I unintentionally neglected to prioritize the assignments and the tests that I had come up. I unintentionally neglected my duties as weight room supervisor at the Colvin Center because I was trying to split my focus between my classwork and the grunts and groans of some of the biggest dudes I've ever seen in my life. I unintentionally neglected my own physical fitness so bad that I gained not just the freshman 15, but the freshman 40. Yeah, and I'm still carrying it. But the one thing that I unintentionally neglected that really left lasting marks on my life was my relationship with God. You see, it wasn't that I was mad at God or I was tired of this whole church thing. But it all started with just a simple decision. To miss church in favor of getting an extra shift at work. To read my Bible or to spend time in prayer, to not read my Bible or not spend time in prayer like I used to because I felt like I needed to unwind from all the busyness, right? From all the learning and all the work that I was doing. You see, the truth is I actually did not make it a priority in my life because I thought, hey, God's always going to be there. I can just pick up right where I left off at any time. However, as the busyness continued into the second week and then on through the first 5 years of college, our relationship with God seemed to fall further and further and further down the list. I will tell you, looking back on that relationship that I unintentionally neglected could have completely transformed my college experience. It truly could have. You see, it could have given me the hope that I needed when things seemed a little bleak. The relationship with God that I unintentionally neglected could have given me the wisdom and the clarity that I needed when after my dreams of being a veterinarian came crashing down and I had no idea what to do. That relationship with God that I unintentionally neglected could have provided me the strength that I needed to say no to some things and that I needed to say no to and yes to some things that I should have said yes to. That relationship with God that I unintentionally neglected started with a few simple decisions. I'll tell you, it didn't improve until I intentionally decided to stop neglecting it. And when I did, God began blessing my life with people like my wife, Leslie, who helped me to restore my relationship with God. You know, the busyness of life has not slowed down since I graduated from college. And we're not trying to freak you guys out today and say, oh my gosh, college is just going to just run all rampant on us. Because it's for all of us. Each and every one of us are probably way too busy than we need to be. Those of you who have been or are currently in the working world, you know this, right? Because what happens is that the busyness just doesn't stop. Instead, it seems to be just a little different. It looks a little different than it did before. And there seems to be a lot more of it. But the wisdom that I learned in college goes far beyond the book learning, as my grandpa used to say. What I learned in college is that the more and more busy my life becomes, the more and more intentional I have to be to not unintentionally neglect the things that really matter.
And so as we started thinking about what do we want to give on this graduation Sunday to not just our graduates, but to even you as our church, is I think we wanted to give some ancient wisdom for a bright future. I mean, that was kind of ultimately the idea that we got. So let's go to Scripture and see what truth has to say. So I kind of looked at, speaking of neglect, looking at 1 Timothy 4:14. It says, "Do not neglect your gift, which was given to you through prophecy when the body of elders laid their hands on you." See, grads, you have this gift. All right, you know, maybe your mom gave you this gift, maybe your dad, maybe a sibling, maybe it was one of your Sunday school teachers, maybe it was a pastor, or maybe you went to a conference and received it, maybe you heard it over a Christian radio station, but you have this gift, right? And we all know this gift. It's the light of the world, right, if you will. Like we've heard Jesus is the light of the world. You have this gift, and with this gift, you can use it. And and it can be shared, right? And so as you get ready to embark on this new adventure of adulthood, you have this gift now, and all of us have this gift, and that's why we're all here together, is we want to use it. So in a post-college world, like Chad was saying, where we have the busyness of family, the busyness of work, the expectations, and we have kids to feed and games to go to and mortgages to pay and taxes to get done and social life to have and churches, and your church family that you're with. We have all these different things that are pulling at us. Why is it that our gift is the first thing we neglect? I mean, I wondered that, and so let me help you understand that if I will. And so I have like a little visual interpretation, and I want to take you to this place. So let's go ahead and I'll set the scene for you, if I will. There should be some music, I think, Scott, if that channel's muted, but let's picture that we're on a beautiful Saturday afternoon, okay? And you're in Oklahoma, so the sunset is starting to get over there in the evening. You had a great morning with your family, and let me tell you, Saturdays are your free day, right? And Americans love our free time. We really value our free time. And so you had a great Saturday with your family. Maybe you went to some ball games, and you just enjoyed your Saturday. But now it's the evening. You grab some groceries on your way home, and the day is starting to get away, right? So you open your trunk, and you've got all these groceries. And, of course, I've got my light, which I'm always carrying with me. It's the gift that I have. And so you start unpacking your vehicle, and you start grabbing some bags. And if you're like me, you're a one-timer, right? And for those of you that know what that is, it's if you're getting groceries, it's going to take one trip, right? Do I have any one-timers out there? Like, all right, you are with me, because if it takes more than one trip, it's a failure. And so you start grabbing bags, and pretty soon you've got one arm filled up, and so you're like, okay, well, I still got another arm. So I'm going to start grabbing some more. And my Saturday's getting away from me. I got to get this done. I've got so many things left that I need to do. And then you always come to that one item that you can't put your arm through. It's usually milk or like some soda cans. And so what do? What's the first thing we do? Is we put our light on top of our car, right? Because I just need to grab one more thing. And then you grab that one more thing, and you grab all your stuff, and the sun's going down, starting to get dark, and you make your way to your porch. You get to your steps, and if you're like me, your porch isn't very well lit, and you struggle up the stairs, you trip over yourself, you're on your way to your kitchen, you drop some eggs and break some eggs on the ground. Your wrists are getting red, and your hands are starting to turn purple because of all this weight you have. You get where I'm going with this, church? We get busy, and all of a sudden we're overwhelmed and things are broken, when all along we didn't have to do this to ourselves. We left our light back with the car, or we left without our light, and then all of a sudden we realized that I'm stressed, I'm busy, and I'm miserable. And so some ancient wisdom, if you will, is Psalms 46:10. I just want to go here for a second, because if we're going to get ancient wisdom for a bright future, and if I think that I can just keep doing this by myself, on my own, over and over, and I still have failure, or I still get overwhelmed, you know what the definition of insanity is, right? It's doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. But what if we went to 46:10 and God says, be still and know that I am God? But if I just work harder, if I just plan earlier and I have everything ready to go, I'll be fine with this. I can work harder. I can fight this. Well, Exodus 14 says, I will fight. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Instead of grabbing all this stuff for busyness and trying to combat busyness with more busyness and being stronger and working harder, what if we took ancient wisdom and we just were still?
Yeah, and I think the practical question for us today is how do we live out Psalm 46:10 and Exodus 14:14? What does it mean for us to be still? I mean, does that mean that we sit down in our easy chair and just wait for God to show up? No, I don't think that that's what God is asking of us. Because remember the end of Psalm 46:10, right? It says, be still and know. And that's the key word there, and know that I am God. Psalms 46 and Exodus 14 are inviting us to be in the very presence of God in order to build our faith as we witness the mighty hand of God moving and working. Otherwise, how do we know anything about God? How do we know that God can handle the fight? How do we know that God is bigger than any situation that we might find ourselves? How do we know that the God who knows us intimately and loves us unconditionally is going to guide us to a future filled with hope? How do we know that God can see past the current busyness of the moment that we find ourselves in when we can't? How do we know these things if we never spend time with God? So what I see in these passages about being still, it's not just for the graduates today. It's really not. This is for all of us, church. In order to be still and to know that God is God, we need to be intentional. Going back to that word, we need to be intentional. We need to be intentional enough to slow down and enter into the presence of the Almighty. And I think the only way that we do this is by not neglecting our spiritual practices, right? It's being intentional about reading our Bibles, being intentional about spending time in quiet prayer, being intentional about individual and corporate worship, being intentional about being in a small group. You see, church, we need to do the things necessary to remain in the presence of God so that we can learn that we can trust God when the business of life attacks. John Wesley once wrote in his journal a lesson that he learned from the Moravians. He says, practice faith until you have it, and then, because you have it, you will practice faith. See, I think that same kind of thinking works just as well for us for finding and remaining in that stillness, to remain in that very presence of God. You see, the very things that we do to enter into the stillness, those things that we just discussed, the Bible reading and prayer and worship and small groups, those are the very things that keep us in the stillness. This is how we combat the busyness. We can't combat it ourselves, but this is how we combat the busyness in which we find ourselves. And I know that for me, the truth is that when the busyness of life ramps up, I need to ramp up my time in the stillness of God.
So I think to end this message, if you will, is one take home that you can take with you. Something that you can take with you this week to help you remember to not get too busy and to remember how to not neglect your relationship. And I think when it comes down to it, is the first thing we do is we blame God, right, for not being there when we're overwhelmed and busy and life is hectic. So the one thing that I think we need to remember, which our bottom line is slow down to find the God who is already there. He's always been there. You've always had this light. We just need to slow down sometimes and remember it, not neglect it. Be intentional with our time. Would you pray with me?